Well, on those wrong-headed students, we've seen them across university campuses in the US, UK, right here in Australia. They'd be feeling even more emboldened by this decision by the ICC. And I wonder if it'll be enough to see them remove their masks, Douglas. You wrote about this trend of anti-Israeli protesters wearing masks outdoors, and you've called on these cowards to show their faces.
Yes, it was fascinating to me, Rita. When I was in Australia recently, I noticed that all the anti-Israel protesters all seemed to be, whilst they were doing their thing of celebrating Hamas, they seemed also to be incredibly scared of COVID. A very 2020. Here in New York, up at Columbia, all these students who are shouting things like "Go back to Poland" to the Jewish students at Columbia, they're also terrified of respiratory viruses. Very interesting. Same thing in the UK, where the brave students at Cambridge University shout their filth and also shout it through masks. Now, I suggest this is all bunk. They're not actually afraid of COVID whilst they're doing their bit for Hamas. They know that what they're doing might be shameful. They know it might get them into trouble. They know that when you stand among a group of people all wearing their Yasser Arafat kaffirs and feeling so proud of dressing up in Hamas terrorist chic, they sort of sense maybe at some point in the future, this will go wrong and I might have to account for my presence here and my actions. So what do? I go all 2020 and I put a mask on. And the authorities, in my view, and everyone else should say, in America in particular, the last group of racists who were allowed to parade through America with their faces covered were the Ku Klux Klan. Now, people used to say then, if you're so proud of your racist ideology, why don't you show your face? And it's the same thing with these students and others. I'd like them to show their faces. I show my face when I speak. You show your face, Rita. We're not afraid of being held to account for our opinions. We put them out there like anyone else who's sensible, and we expect to be held to account for them. These people do not. They are acting simultaneously as radicals and cowards. It's not surprising those two things often go together, but I'd say to them, to use a phrase that might trigger them, man up, guys. Show your face. Let the world see the bigotry face to face.
Well, I saw some of them when they were arrested. I think it was UCLA, it was some university campus where the police made a point after they put them in handcuffs to remove their masks. And they did not seem to enjoy that at all. Now, to the UK quickly, where the Times is reporting that police are being told to make fewer arrests because of the lack of space in prisons. Yes, chief constables are being advised to consider pausing non-priority arrests and also suspend operations that may trigger large number of arrests until there is enough capacity in the prison system. What could go wrong with that, Douglas?
I have to say, the UK police advice is late. The UK police don't bother arresting anyone anyway. I mean, unless obviously, for instance, you've tweeted something out about a trans child perhaps not being operated on and molested by pervy surgeons. But, if you have your house robbed, and I mentioned this to you before, Rita, half the police forces in England and Wales haven't made one arrest in recent years for burglary, not one.
True.
So actually, this advice, and it's always the most ridiculous advice, that, we're running out of prison places, so let's just arrest fewer criminals, as opposed to we will build as many prison places as there are criminals who need to go into them. They're worried about the number of people in prisons, and they don't need to worry. The way that the police in Britain are going, the prisons may be filled with tweet crime people, but there won't be any burglars. And of course, as we know from Sadiq Khan's London, there aren't any stabbers or murderers. Actually, I'm amazed there's any shortage of prison spaces. I'd have thought that if you did have the bad luck to be locked up in Chokey in the UK these days, you'd be able to effectively hot desk it among the cells. You probably have your choice of cell because most of them are empty because the police can't arrest anyone for any actual crime. Haven't bothered in years.
Now, before you go, I want to get your opinion on this new therapy craze that seems to be very popular with some women who are going to the woods and just scream and bash the ground with sticks. It's called rage therapy. These rage ritual therapies can be a costly affair. If you want the full package, it can cost upwards of $4,000. Money well spent, Douglas?
I mean, it struck me that a few of them just ought to take it out by going to the gym. It'll be cheaper and necessary. Not to want to body shame anyone, but there's something just it's a sort of civilizational breakdown thing. This, we have somebody there saying they feel sad and another one feels afraid. I hate to break it to them, but if any of them are watching, human life is sad. It is also joyful. You are sometimes going to be afraid in your life, and sometimes you won't be. You might even be brave. Human life, one of the great things about it is it's filled with lots of emotions, but in general, it's a good idea to keep them in check and keep yourself sane. And one of the ways in which you can tell that you're not being sane is when you're standing in the middle of a wood, being rinsed for $4,000 by some charlatan, smashing the ground and screaming. That's a sign that you've not got it together, and an overpriced stick beating on the ground session ain't going to help you. I would argue all sorts of other things could, but these are just people whose lives are not together. I wish them luck, but this isn't going to put it together. They are going to have to do a lot more work than this, Rita.